Today I want to talk about a story that feels both surprising and, in a strange way, increasingly inevitable. Gabriel Martinelli, and what looks like a growing sense that his future at Arsenal is starting to narrow rather than expand. And let's be clear from the start. This isn't really about Martinelli agitating for a transfer. By all accounts, he isn't. The more uncomfortable question is the one Arsenal seem to be asking themselves. Do they still see a clear, important role for him in Mikel Arteta's team going forward? On the surface, you'd think the answer would be yes. Martinelli is 25. He's just been part of a title-winning Arsenal side. He's under contract until 2027, and the club even has the option to extend that to 2028. This should be prime years, not a moment where his position feels uncertain. That's why the first bit of transfer news made perfect sense. Galatasaray came in with an offer reported around 45 million euros, and Martinelli turned it down. If you're Martinelli, why would you jump into a move like that right now? Turkey might be a great league, but it can feel like a step away from the absolute top level. For a player who's been competing for the biggest trophies, it would be understandable to see that as an early exit from the main stage. But then the context changes when you bring Hilal into the conversation. Saudi clubs can offer a different kind of proposal. Massive wages for the player, and potentially a fee big enough that Arsenal have to at least sit down and take it seriously. Because Arsenal, like many elite clubs, aren't just shopping this summer. They also need to sell. And they need to sell well before the window closes. Still, you can talk about bids and money all day, and it doesn't mean much unless you look at what's happening on the pitch, or more accurately, what's happening on the team sheet. Martinelli being left out of matchday squad once might not raise alarms. It could be fitness. It could be a tactical call. It could be a minor issue nobody wants to make public. But Arsenal have now had two major moments without him even making the bench. The Community Shield against Manchester City, and then the Premier League opener against Coventry City. Two straight omissions from the squad starts to feel less like coincidence and more like communication. When a player isn't even among the substitutes, that's not subtle. And when you widen the lens, you can see why the club might feel comfortable making that kind of decision. Arsenal's attack has already been reshaped. Christos Tzolis has arrived from Club Brugge and made an immediate impression. And the fact the club showed interest in someone like Vinicius Jr. tells you the caliber of left winger they were prepared to pursue. That's not knocking Martinelli, but it does hint at where the manager wants the ceiling of that position to be. Now, it's true that Leandro Trossard is left for Besiktas, and you might think, well, surely that opens minutes back up, but football doesn't work like a simple vacancy list. One player goes, another arrives, the tactical plan shifts, and suddenly the pathway you assumed would be there just isn't, which is why this whole situation stings. Because Martinelli's Arsenal story has been, for the most part, a really good one. He came from Ituano in 2019 as a teenager who wasn't widely known in England, and almost immediately he looked like a spark. Fans loved the pace, the direct running, and that sense that he was constantly hunting the game. In the early days of Arteta's rebuild, Martinelli felt like one of the symbols of hope, the kind of player you could build around as the club tried to climb back toward the top. The numbers back that up. He's made 278 appearances for Arsenal and scored 62 goals. And last season, when Arsenal finally got their hands back on the Premier League title and went all the way to the Champions League final, Martinelli played 53 times. 53. That's not a fringe player. That's a core squad member contributing throughout a relentless season. So to go from that to not making the squad at all is jarring. It feels harsh. It feels sudden. But top clubs rarely make decisions based on emotion, and Arsenal can't afford it either. Not if they want to stay where they've worked so hard to get back to. There's also a footballing argument, and it's one that has followed Martinelli for a while. On his day, with space to run into, he can be devastating. But against deep defensive blocks, when teams sit in and deny those channels, his impact has sometimes come and gone. The consistency of influence hasn't always matched the raw talent. If Arteta has decided Tzolis is now the preferred option on that side, and if Martinelli isn't even assured a spot on the bench, then keeping him becomes a strange middle ground. The player doesn't get what he needs, which is minutes and a clear role. The club doesn't get what it needs, which is value and clarity. and the squad dynamic becomes awkward, a big-name player drifting without a defined place. That brings us back to the financial reality of this summer. Arsenal knew coming into the window that trading players would matter. Sales like Trossard and Christian Norgard help. But they're not the kind of deals that single-handedly fund what you want to do at the very top end of the market. To generate truly significant funds, you usually need one major outgoing. Martinelli is one of the few players who could realistically command that sort of fee without the club having to break apart the core structure of the team. And that's why that €45 million offer from Galatasaray never felt enough. For a 25-year-old, with his resume, with his contract situation, and with Arsenal holding the leverage of an extension option, the price has to reflect more than just talent. It has to reflect scarcity. It has to reflect timing. It has to reflect the fact that Arsenal don't need to sell him at a discount. If Al Hilal want him, Arsenal should demand a premium, not a decent fee, not a polite fee, a premium, because replacing a player like Martinelli isn't just about finding another winger. It's about finding someone who fits the system, accepts a role, stays fit, and delivers in big moments. That replacement cost is always higher than people imagine. But here's the uncomfortable conclusion. If that premium offer arrives, Arsenal should likely take it. Not because Martinelli isn't a good player, and not because he hasn't given the club plenty. He has. He deserves to be remembered fondly. But football moves quickly, and the signs are starting to stack up in one direction. 2 big matches have passed, and he hasn't been in the squad. The attack has been reshaped. New options are being trusted immediately, and the club needs sales that actually move the needle before the window shuts. So unless something changes fast, it feels like we're watching the closing stretch of a chapter. The teenager from Ichuano helped Arsenal climb back to the summit. And now, as Arsenal try to stay there, he may be nearing the end of his own journey in North London.